In the early days of podcasting, when I started back in 2005, we were all gobbling up every single podcast that came out because there weren't that many. Fast forward to 2024, and now we're wondering, hey, does everybody have enough podcasts? And so I thought I would ask you, where are you in that spectrum? Are you a person that's looking for more episodes, or do you have your stable of regulars and yeah, you're good? Or are you like me, where you've got more podcasts than you can listen to? Let's find out. Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your award-winning Hall of Fame podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you so much for tuning in. This is the longest-running podcast about podcasting in the world. And I help you plan your podcast, launch your podcast, grow it, and if you want to, monetize. Our website is schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code LISTENER when you sign up to save on either a monthly or yearly subscription. And you heard the beginning. We're trying to figure out, hey, how full is your dance card? How old am I? When it comes to getting a new podcast, because we know when you get in someone's routine, that's why you want to be consistent with your schedule. That is huge. But what if somebody finds a new show and they go, that's pretty good? Are they going to kick somebody out of their routine? What's the deal? So let's find out.
This is Ethan Reese with the Daily Sports History Podcast. And for me, I'm not even close to empty. Even though I listened to over 1,000 hours of podcasts just last year, I'm still looking for more. And the more I listen, the more I find other shows as they're guests on other shows or they're doing ad swaps, and it allows me to find other great shows. And so the more I listen, the more I'm able to find. And if you like sports history, you can listen to the Daily Sports History Podcast, where we take a topic in sports history and dive into it all within under 10 minutes so you get your fix every single day at dailysportshistory.com.
Ethan, thank you so much for that. I threw this question out during a coaching call, and my buddy Ralph from Ask Ralph Podcast, if you are looking for help with your finances, he's got a great show, AskRalphPodcast.com. And here's what he said.
I'm looking for them too, Dave, but I'm sort of new in listening to them. Yeah. So, when I hear one, I was like, oh, that's cool. I add that to my repertoire of things I listen to.
So Ralph has some room, and I threw this question by my co-host, Jim Collison of Ask the Podcast Coach.
Well, first, not any harder, just different problems.
Yeah.
But second, I'm the kind of person that I've got as many as I need. I'm not looking right now. If I get a solid recommendation, I'll go have a listen, but I'm not actively looking for new podcasts.
And Jim's show is Home Gadget Geeks. You can find him at theaverageguy.tv. Next, we got Chris.
Hey, what's happening? This is Chris from Podtastic Audio. Yeah, I know, another show about podcasting, just like the one you're listening to right now. Yeah, check that out. And when it comes to the question of the month about, do I have room on my queue for more podcasts? In fact, the truth is, yeah, I actually do. Just the other day, I just added like 2 more shows to my queue to listen to. I listen to podcasts while I'm at work, and during the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday range, I probably hit up my favorite shows. Come towards the end of the week, it's whether or not I want to listen to the radio or perhaps listen to new podcasts that I discovered. As long as they are not daily episode shows, oh my goodness, I cannot keep up with a daily show. Forget that. But if you have a weekly episode podcast and it's a subject that I might be interested in, yeah, I'll definitely check it out. And maybe, if you're lucky, I'll subscribe. Once again, this is Chris from Podtastic Audio. You can find me at podtasticaudio.com. And until next time, happy podcasting.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we got Mark.
Hi, Dave. I have my current selection of shows I listen to regularly, which includes yours, by the way.
Thank you.
And I never find myself saying, I need more podcasts. But if something interesting comes my way, I will gladly add it to my lineup without removing another podcast from my current list of regular shows. To make time, however, I now find myself more and more skipping episodes based on titles and descriptions that are not to my liking.
Ah,
This is Mark Vinette from the History of North America podcast and videocast, as well as the Historical Jesus podcast, where I explore the sweeping saga of the life and times of the Galilean preacher from Nazareth at markvinette.com.
thank you so much, Mark. Next up, my buddy York.
Hi, Dave. This is York from Welcome to Earth Stories, original sci-fi stories that breaks the fourth wall and pushes you in to other dimensions. I am stuffed full of podcasts. Looking at my phone right now, I have 207 shows that I subscribe to. Now, I'm not looking for more shows, but here's the thing. Recently, I was listening to a podcast, a 3-hour podcast. I mean, those are long. And this show was twice a week. So I was devoted for 6 hours of listening to this show. Then I decided to give it a break. And when I did, everything else, all the other shows that I was neglecting, I started listening to them. It was just a huge burden because sometimes I could get stuck in certain habits, listening habits. And I'm sure a lot of us are like this. But sometimes when we break away from the things that we listen to faithfully, then it gives an opportunity to listen to other shows. And I'm always open for new shows. I try not to be so rigid. If there's another show a little bit better, a little bit more interesting, then that's okay. I will get rid of the other show. I am not beholden to any of these shows. So when I stopped being so rigid, it opened up my mind to explore even more incredible shows. Once again, this is York from Welcome to Earth Stories. These are original sci-fi stories and a little bit of government conspiracy thrown in for good measure. You could follow my show at welcometoearthstories.com. There's 6 seasons so far, and we have a wide selection of different voices from all around the world. This is not just an audio drama that you listen to and you go to the next one, but there's also commentary as well, and you get to learn a little bit more about me and also my guest on the show. Season 7 is starting later on this year. You could check out my spin-off show, Experimental Stories, in the meantime. Once again, I'm at welcometoearthstories.com. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much, York. And I am also kind of in that situation where I think I am a little too full. And what I mean by that is I will go ahead and add you to my app. But I'm also noticing, like, I think it was Mark that said it's titles now. Titles really come into play because I listen to a ton of podcasts about podcasting. And if the title is something that I go, yeah, probably don't really need to hear that one, that's a big one. And then also I am finding that if I have 2 shows that kind of give me the same thing and one is chock full of ads, yeah, I'm going ad free. I applaud you and the fact that you have somehow become successful enough to have ads. But the problem I'm seeing is, although they just went back up a little bit, the price of ads was going down. And if you are using that to feed your family, the only way to feed your family is to add more ads, which I totally get. But no thank you. So that is something that will make me choose one show over another. But the thing that, and I think it was Mark that said it, it's the titles. And then Jim said it, if he gets a solid recommendation. So this is where we go back to Jacobs Media back in, I believe it was 2019. So it's been a while, that they said 70% of podcasts are discovered via word of mouth. And so that's why I always myself try to remind you, and I tell all my students to remind your audience to follow the show, to tell a friend. And if you think about it, if you watch a YouTube video at the end, somebody's going to go, hey, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Now, why do they say that? Because you know that I know that you know that red button and what happens if you click on we all know that, but why do they say like, subscribe, and ring the bell? Because it works.
Oh, lovely. Here comes another 10-second tangent from Dave. Brilliant. Such absolute rubbish.
Now, it doesn't work 100 times. In fact, I always say that you're going to get, if you're lucky, 3% of your audience to take action, and it's always something under 5%. Teachable, the course companies say 2% of your audience will take action. When I was listening to Radiolab, they said 1%, and I heard a new app today. Well, it's not a new app, but I heard a new show, and the makers of Fountain said this.
The business perspective, the most important thing for us is revenue. And, you know, to give you a sense of that, we do have about 4% of our users pay for our premium subscription, which is $2.99 a month.
$2.99 a month, and they're getting 4%. So if you're looking to monetize your show, look at the total number of your, listeners, and then, multiply that by 0.03, or if you're Fountain, 0.04.
Ugh. Finally, back to the show.
So your titles are very important. I just happened to be in an app, and I typed in the word podcasting, and a bunch of shows that I am not aware of came up. And if you're doing a podcast about podcasting, I'm going to listen. And so I added them to my app. And when that happens, much like York was saying, if I actually listen to an audiobook, when I get back to my podcast, I have a lot of episodes to listen to. And there will come a time when I just go, not so much unsubscribe, but I won't listen. But in theory, you've already gotten the download. I am one of those guys. I download every episode if I can. I got plenty of room on my phone, and I don't have to deal with Wi-Fi issues and things of that nature. So I think what happens then is this is how I eventually unsubscribe. Since we're talking about getting listeners, how do they unsubscribe? How do I unsubscribe? So this is a survey of one. So I add more podcasts to my queue, and then eventually I will either A, realize that every time I go in and I look at the titles, I'm just like, yeah, nope, yep, nope, yep, nope. And after probably a couple of months of me not really listening to your show, I will eventually look and go, you know what? I'm not their target audience. And I will then unsubscribe from the show. But just again, beating the dead horse, the title of your episode. This is why I don't care what episode number it is. I don't think that makes people click. I don't think they're looking at two episodes and going, well, this one's episode 27, and ooh, this one's 36. I don't think that has any bearing because it has no bearing on me. So I assume everyone thinks like me. I get it. So, and it really is just an ego play for most cases, but that's why I say make your title, really explain to them what's the benefit of listening to their show, and then treat the title of your episode like you've made the listener a promise. Like, this is what you're going to get out of it. And I think you will then get people that will stay subscribed, stay listening to your show. In a minute, I'm going to tell you about something I did unsubscribe, and we're going to talk about what happens if you change your show to your regular listeners. So what happens to your audience if you make some changes to your show? And this is somewhat kind of obvious, but let's talk about it. Some people are going to love it, and some people are not. And I'm going to give you an example that's not a podcast, but it does apply. And that is, I got what I consider rude email from the folks over at Evernote. Now, if you're not a regular listener of the show, I've been using Evernote since 2012. And they basically sent me an email saying, your bill's going to almost double. And of course, the reason it's going up is because they're adding AI. Yes, I expect any day now to walk by a box of Frosted Flakes at the grocery store and see Tony D. the Tiger going, now with AI. Ugh. And so they had a bunch of other features that were all about sharing. Well, I'm an army of one. And I went, yeah, I'm not paying $129. And I went looking, and there were a bunch of there's Notion, there's just a ton of these, and they were either A, too hard to transfer my stuff to the new stuff, as in, well, first of all, Evernote's like a jilted lover. It's like, fine, go ahead and leave, but you have to do it 100 notes at a time. And I'm like, you're limiting to 100 notes at a time? Yes, and I want my black t-shirt back. Okay. Well, I found one that is still more than I was going to pay, and it's called NoteJoy. And the thing that really made me move is A, it's kind of like not strikingly pretty, but Notion is just so blah. And it's actually a little too, it can be, let's say, more complex. Same with the Obsidious, I think was another one. And I found this one, and it was kind of like the Three Bears. I was like, oh, this one's too hard. Oh, this one is not enough, especially the free stuff. The free stuff had so many extra steps. I was like, no. I don't mind paying for it. I just want to pay $120. And so I moved to NoteJoy. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. You'll probably see tutorials for that on YouTube coming. So why did I move? Because it didn't deliver enough value for me. I value $129, maybe a little more than you do. Who knows? It depends on your wallet. But the thing is, when you change your show, some people are going to like it and some people will not. Now, here's the fun part that you have to be okay with. You are going to change. I am not the same person I was in 2012, and neither are you. We all change, and as we change, we then sometimes change our show because, well, it's just not doing it for us. Maybe we have a different motive. We talked a lot in the last episode about our why. And so when you change the show, you have to be okay with the fact that some people are going to love the new changes and other people are not. And this is where really understanding who your audience is and what they're looking for from you can make that decision easier, because you're like, no, I know they want this, so I'm going to do that. And then you just have to realize that the people that don't like it have a name, and that name is not your target audience. And that's really how I feel about Evernote. I don't know who their product is for. Over the years, they've tried to make it a task manager. They added in, I think, a calendar, all sorts of other stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm just here to take notes. That's really all I want. And all I wanted was, I love the ability to send an email, to take an email that somebody sent me and just forward it to an email address, and it turned it into a note. That was another reason why I like NoteJoy. Some of the other ones had other features, but that was the one I was really looking for. And so Evernote kind of tried to be everything to everyone. And if you've listened to this show before, that is usually not a recipe for success. And so if you change your show, your audience might go, hey, this isn't really for me anymore. I'll give you another classic example. I just got done watching Saturday Night Live. It's a really popular show, or so it used to be. It's live. That's what makes it different. You never know what's going to happen. Somebody might, laugh or accidentally blurt out the F word. It's live, and it's supposed to be comedy. And I think, and it used to be edgy. They used to really go after stuff. You're like, ooh, I can't believe you do that. And if you think about comedy these days, anybody that does that, if they wanted to be edgy right now, they would do a skit about cancel culture. But if they do, well, then cancel culture will grab their porches, yes, their porches and their pitchforks. There we go. Did I just say a naughty word? Yes, their torches and pitchforks, and go after them. But I noticed that I've watched this show literally now for years, and it really doesn't make me laugh. I basically fast forward to the news segment, and even that is kind of like, okay. And then it dawned on me today, I'm not their target audience. I loved this show when I was in my 20s and 30s, and I'm a bit away from that at this point. And so maybe it's that the show is still funny if I was 20 or 30, and you kind of have to just be okay that not everybody's going to like your show. But as we heard today, to kind of bring this back, if you can get your audience to recommend it to a friend, you have a shot at becoming part of their routine. They will add you to the app, and that's where your titles really have to come in handy to make them go, ooh, I want to hear about this. So just putting somebody's name like episode 16, Dave Jackson. Yeah, that's not going to make anybody click. And you might say, well, everybody knows who Dave Jackson is. And I'm like, I'm here to tell you, no, they don't. But if you said something like Dave Jackson helps you grow your audience, then people might click on that. What's the benefit? So watch your titles, because we learned today that people are still willing to give new shows a shot. There are people that are actually openly looking for more shows. They're new to podcasting. They're like, great. And especially if you're doing a show that boomers might be interested in, those folks with gray hair have a lot of time on their hands because they're retired and they have smartphones and they just don't know how to consume a podcast in many cases. And that's the biggest room for growth right now, are people with a slightly older audience, not so much 90 and above, because those people have the giant flip phones. If I'm going to paint with a really wide brush, it's the people with a lot of time on their hands that might have a little gray hair. Yeah, those people, we need to train them. And really, we need to train people of all ages. If they're not into podcasting, we need to find out what they're interested in, find them a good show. I have a friend of mine that doesn't have a podcast. He's just a listener. And he told me the one day, he goes, man, there's a lot of bad podcasts. And I was like, yep, welcome to my world. So find them a good show and then explain to them the benefits of podcasting and get them hooked.
Welcome to Because of My Podcast, where we spotlight the results people are achieving because of their podcast.
Craig Van Slyke is a university professor in Louisiana. He does the show Live Well and Flourish, and here's what happened because of his podcast.
So I got an email this morning from a former student. When I say former, it's from 20 years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, that listens to Live Well and Flourish, which has nothing to do with what I teach, nothing to do with the classes he took from me. But he reached out to thank me, and he needs some career advice. So it never would have happened if I had no idea how he found out about Live Well and Flourish. But it's pretty cool. You just never know.
You never know who's listening, and that person can't find you if you don't publish your podcast. Speaking of publishing a podcast, Craig just celebrated episode 100, and he reflects talking about rebranding and changing the show. He started off with a co-host. He's got a lot of great insights on episode 100. You can find that at livewellandflourish.com/100. I'll put a link to that out in the show notes, but here's one that I thought you might like.
Most things in life are not under your control, at least not completely under your control. That's certainly true of podcasting. I can't control whether you listen or not. I can't control what competing podcasts do. I can't control what episodes the algorithms serve up on your podcast app. I can't control who sees my social media posts. I can't control whether listeners like what I put out. But I can control the quality of the content I produce and the topics I discuss. So that's where I direct my efforts. Sure, I promote the podcast and even buy advertising from time to time, but I really can't control the download numbers. So I try to avoid worrying about those and just concentrate on putting out what I think is high-quality, useful content. The listeners will come or they won't. Either way, I'm satisfied knowing that I'm doing what I can.
Congratulations, Craig, on 100 episodes of that. He also has a new show, AI Goes to College. You can find that at aigoestocollege.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And since I'm kind of doing shout outs, one of my favorite books ever, I used to read it in January every year, is from a guy named Michael Hyatt. The book is Platform, Get Noticed in a Noisy World. And Michael, again, kind of pivoted and got into personal productivity. And he has a new product out called Full Focus, where it's kind of interesting. This is why I liked it. And again, when you can do something that kind of sets you apart, like, wow, that's different. I haven't seen that before. And some of this is not new. He goes over things like, your body, your mind, your spirit, your love life, your family, your community, your money, your work, and your hobbies. And you basically go through and figure out what are your real priorities, and then how are you going to achieve these goals. He's got a couple books about like your best life ever, but I was kind of contacted by his team. I'm like, hey, can you give Michael a shout out? And this is, again, value for value kind of thinking. Michael has given me so much value from his book that I reread it over and over and over that I'm happy to say that. Now, there is an affiliate program in here. So if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/full focus, you can check this out. And there's a couple different versions. You can do like the self-paced version, which is the one I'm going to buy. There's an actual retreat you can go through and work through this. But Michael is a guy kind of like Daniel J. Lewis. If I see his name on it, I know it's going to be good. So I'll have links to that out in the show notes. And congratulations to Michael on his latest product.
In case you missed it, it's time for a podcast rewind.
Well, hello, my fellow entertainment junkie. I am Jay Franze. I am from The Jay Franze Show, your backstage pass to the entertainment industry. When I thought about taking a peek behind the curtain of podcasting, there was no one else I could think of other than Dave Jackson. You know the guy, the one from the School of Podcasting. And when you're done listening to this episode, if you don't mind going right down there in the show notes, yes, right there, you see that link? You can click on that link to hear all of Dave's valuable insights and entertaining stories. Dave, sir, I can't thank you enough for coming on my show, and thank you for all that you do for podcasting.
Thank you, Jay. And that's a new strategy I'm doing. When I get interviewed at the end, I go, hey, can you cut me a kind of a quick, hey, go listen to this episode, tell people what we did, that whole 9 yards. So that's a new strategy. Introduces you to Jay. And it's also letting them know that, yeah, I'm going to be promoting my appearance on your show. Might be something you want to do with your podcast. Links are in the show notes, along with everyone who contributed to the question of the month out at schoolofpodcasting.com/921.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One last thing. I am playing with a tool that I'll be talking about in a future episode. But if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/contest, this is over by March 9th. So you basically need to do this now. Schoolofpodcasting.com/contest. And I'm giving away 30 minutes of free consulting. Thanks so much. Speaking of consulting with Dave, you can get unlimited amounts of that by becoming a member of the School of Podcasting. Go to learn.schoolofpodcasting.com. We'll take you right there. Or you can go to schoolofpodcasting.com/listener. That'll automatically put in that coupon of listener, and that'll save you on either a monthly or yearly subscription. So in the future, we will be talking about YouTube and how you can go in and see how well you're doing, because turns out, I'll give you a little tease. I had 34,000 downloads. Well, actually, I had 34,000 views, and I'm going to explain why I'm really not that happy about that. Yeah, I know. Schoolofpodcasting.com/follow. Thanks so much for listening. Until next week, take care, God bless, and class is dismissed. Makes me wet my pants because they actually talked about kind of like a Target. God bless America. God bless America. Let's turn off the notifications over here. Mr. Notification, you are done. All right. Let's try that again, shall we? To the people that are already subscribed. Well, in some case, just this one case. I just realized, I'm assuming you know this. Links to everybody who chimed in on the question of the month, you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/921. Today's episode is dedicated to the memory of Bob Heil. We lost Bob, maker of Heil microphones, the Heil PR40, so popular it got a jingle. And that is the fabulous Emily Prokop from the Story Behind podcast. But I got to work with Bob when I was the head of the New Media Expo, and I hired him as a speaker, and he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's an audio nerd, did a lot with microphones, and in the early days of podcasting, you weren't a real podcaster unless you had a Heil PR40. Now that's been kind of the Shure SM7B, or right now I'm using a Rode Pod mic, but Bob Heil, R.I.P.